Hi, I am Rose, and you are watching The Sovereign Soul. This is the Fix You for Free series for people who have found out that they have cancer and don't have any money and want to get better. The guidance tools I'm giving are things that I myself am using. I found out a year ago that I have tumors in my right breast. I'm a single mom of four, and I certainly don't want to be leaving sooner than I need to. So, this is part 6. I don't know how many parts they're going to be. The second part, I spoke about diet, and I want to go back to that because why would somebody choose a diet that is so against mainstream? And I didn't choose it because it was mainstream, but I certainly because it wasn't mainstream, but I certainly researched it because it wasn't mainstream. I usually talk about things to do with self mastery and soul healing and spiritual awakening and consciousness and the consciousness of the planet and when we die. So, why am I talking about things like health? I cannot fit into one category, and health is a massive part of my life and has become an even bigger one now that I have found out that I have tumors in my boo boo. So diet-wise, I have opted for the carnivore diet. Like I've explained, this series is for people who don't have money and find out that your body is pretty sick. I myself had a bit of money in the first few months that I found out. Subsequently, my income has halved, if not maybe even it's a third of what it was. So I just don't have the money for supplements, for treatments, for stuff that I'd like to do. I'm not on that journey. I'm not someone who has found out that you're sick and you can pretty much choose how you're going to get better or even have the finances to pay for supplements at the moment. My priorities are to take care of my children, but also to take care of my health. So, carnivore diet, that was the one I chose. And I'm going to give you some of my logic behind it because if you research and if you look at papers that have been like studies which have been funded, everything points the direction that meat is bad for you, vegetables are good for you, and you should only be eating vegetables, especially if you find out that you have cancer. So then you've got to juice and salads, green is best. And I obviously thought that initially, but then I had done a course on ketogenic diets like a couple of years ago, and I realized that going on to a ketogenic diet intuitively, based on my knowledge, was going to be the best for me. So I understood that cancer is fueled by glucose, and glucose in the blood is from carbohydrates actually, or if you eat high protein, then your body does something called gluconeogenesis, and then your body will your blood glucose will go up even if you're just eating protein. So it's very important to be on a high fat, low protein diet if you want to stay in ketosis, and if you have cancer and you're on a carnivore diet, high fat, low protein is the way to go, because then your body will stay in a state of ketosis and your blood glucose won't go up and you won't be feeding tumors with glucose. So that's a good thing. So this was the one thing that this diet ticked. But now, if you don't have money and you are on a vegan plant-based diet and you have cancer, it costs you. Not only is it expensive because you have to eat organic, and in the meat world, if you're doing carnivore, what you can afford is still better for you and more well absorbed than if you were eating vegetables. I recommend people eat beef, fatty beef. That is the best, most nutritious food that you can get. If you are someone that likes organ meats, a little bit of that is good, not too much. But it's great because it's high in copper and it's high in vitamin A, and so a little bit of organ meat will be good, or liver I'm talking about. But if you don't like that, as long as you're just eating fatty cuts of meat with like a 80 fat to 20 protein ratio, you are getting all the nourishment that you need. The only thing I suggest you supplement on, if you can, is iodine. And I've said before, you can use Lugal's iodine, which is not very expensive. Now, when it comes to vegetables, if you can't buy organic, you're getting tons of spray. So plants do not detox themselves like we detox ourselves, or animals detox themselves. So even if they're not getting a perfect diet, their body is still healthier than a plant that has been sprayed with chemicals. And then there is data, and I'm not going to link you to pages because I haven't looked into it that deeply, but there are doctors, sorry, I got fright my kitty, but there are doctors who have looked into it, and that plants actually emit toxins, and toxins that are not good for us. If you take something like green tea, for example, there are really good properties that they talk about in green tea, but what they don't talk about is the ones that are actually quite toxic for human beings. They only take isolated nutrients and tell you that's good for you, and they don't give you the whole picture of plants. And this is something that I've looked into for myself. Plants also are not completely bioavailable. What bioavailable means, your body can't absorb those nutrients. So if you are already nutrient deficient, which you are if you have cancer, because your immune system is compromised if you have cancer, there are certain systems going on in your body which are not working, and that all indicates that your immune system is compromised, because a normal healthy immune system is kicking out cancer cells and getting rid of them all the time. If your body's not doing that, chances are your body's not getting the right nutrition. Nutrition is the baseline of health. Plants can't give you that nutrition. Vegans have to supplement on certain things because you cannot get that nutrition from plants. Because for some people, it's not bioavailable. I was vegetarian for most of my adult life, and even started young as a child. I was probably 14 the first time I went full-blown vegetarian, and stayed vegetarian for 7 years. I was not healthy. Then at 21, I started eating meat again, and I've never called myself vegetarian again, but I've gone through long stints of not eating meat, which has been very damaging for me because I have had anemia and didn't even know until my second child was born. So I find that if I try and do plant-based iron, I have to supplement. But if I eat red meat, I didn't have to supplement. So I've always had red meat here and there through the years since I found out that I was anemic, because the red meat helps my anemia, which is really helpful. If you've ever had anemia, you'll know how debilitating it can be when your iron gets super low. So you don't have that issue on a carnivore diet. A lot of people who have cancer are anemic because their bodies are not absorbing nutrients. So nutrients are absorbed primarily through the small intestine when we are eating diets that are aggravating our body. So for example, if you're eating things like, maybe your body doesn't like gluten, or maybe your body doesn't like wheat, maybe your body doesn't like commercial dairy. I say commercial because some people handle raw dairy very well, and that is considered a carnivore food. But ultimately, you're putting loads of sugar in, and what you're doing is you're making your small intestine very unhappy, and it gets like a lining on it. So the little things, I can't remember what they're called, what are supposed to absorb nutrients, are actually like in, and sometimes there's like a coating that those little things can't even come out. So your food is kind of like going in and going out and going in and going out, and you're not absorbing the good stuff, what you need to. Now, when you eat meat, it's a totally different story. Your body is designed to eat meat. Would you believe that? That is so not what we're taught in mainstream. Our stomach acid is the same as predators, which means our stomach acid is geared to eat meat. It breaks it down healthily. It takes time to digest, which you want. You don't want food moving through your body super quickly. You want it to take its time because that way you absorb all the things you need from it. So that doesn't happen with plants. There's so much fiber, and people are all like onto this fiber issue to have a healthy colon and a healthy bowel and all of that stuff, and that fiber helps you absorb nutrients. Well, you don't need to worry about any of that stuff when you eat meat. And what is more affordable? If you have cancer, I have cancer, what is more affordable to me? Well, to put food in my mouth that my body completely and entirely digests and utilizes and nourishes me so that I don't need to have supplements. Am I worried about poisoning through antibiotics and vaccines and things that animals get? No, I avoid chicken because I know that they have been vaccinating chickens here, maybe across the world, but with mRNA vaccines. So I try and get free range eggs and free range chicken as much as possible. So I don't eat tons of that. But red fatty beef, whatever you're getting, even if it's supplemented, I don't think that that's bad for you. You're still getting more from your food than if you were just eating vegetables. So just looking at it from a cost perspective, I can eat this food, which is going to nourish me and balance my hormones, lower inflammation. I don't need to take any supplements, fills me up really well. Or I'm going to have to try and source huge amounts of organic vegetables. I need to avoid grains because I think it's been proven enough that you shouldn't eat grains if you have cancer. You shouldn't be eating carbohydrates if you have cancer. And if you haven't looked into that yet, please look into it. Carbohydrates are fuel for cancer. If you have cancer, you don't want to fuel it. You want to either keep it the same, shrink it down, or hopefully just get rid of the thing that it shrinks down so much that it just leaves the body. And if it's not going to leave the body, you want to live with it. You don't want it to grow. So don't feed your body carbohydrates if you have cancer. Look into that. In the first video I posted on the carnivore diet, I did a whole thing. I put links, and Dr. Thomas Seyfried, he's amazing. His information on cancer is mind-blowing. I've watched so many of his podcasts. I've even read some of his papers, which were quite difficult for somebody who doesn't really have a brain for that kind of technicality. But he is incredible. And he will tell you glutamine and glucose are the two fuels that feed cancer. I know that meat is high in glutamine, but apparently all food is high in glutamine. So it's not really something you can get rid of unless you decide that you're going to fast. But if you can stop the glucose supply, you're doing great already. Okay, so plant-based is expensive. You have to go organic. It is preparation until the cows come home. And I'm sorry, if you're sick and broke, the last thing on earth you want to do is breaking your back all the time to feed yourself. It's hard enough if you're still having to live a life, you're still having to work, you're still having to run a household, you're still having to take care of your kids, do your life, and then you've still got to worry about the food that you put into your body. You want it to be easy. Carnivore is easy, so easy. Whatever you choose. Like maybe I make some broth, and I take that broth and I throw it on some mince. We call it mince in South Africa. You call it ground beef, I think. And there, I've got like a soupy, brothy mince. I always use fatty mince. And there's a meal. It takes you like 2 seconds. Maybe you want to scramble some eggs. Maybe you want to fry some eggs. Maybe you want to take some mince, put it in a patty. Food's always ready in like not even 10 minutes. For me, it is anyway. Minute steaks or a normal steak. I like my steaks on the rarer side, so it's quick. If you have an air fryer, if you're blessed enough, I had one bought for me as a gift. I feel so spoiled and blessed. But that's also awesome to make steaks in. Or you can throw, like, if you like chicken, if you can get free range, you know, slap a chicken in the oven. It's so easy. Slap it in a pot with a lid. It's so easy. And all you need is salt. You don't need anything else. So I would recommend good quality salt. The salt that I use is a desert salt because we have that in South Africa. And I think it's got the least amount probably of heavy metals, which are prevalent in most other salts, including Himalayan salt now, which is a little bit sad, and sea salt. So I choose to use desert salt. And then water. I drink rainwater because that's what I have available to me. I would never drink tap water because I haven't for a very long time, like probably 15 years, because they do put a lot of shit in our water. That water is recycled, and we can get into all the stories of what they put into the water, but if you can avoid it, you should. So you want to make sure you're getting good quality water, that you're getting fatty beef, and a good quality salt. And that's it. Salt is not actually expensive. Not what I buy. It costs me like so cheap. That's so cheap. That's $1 something a bag, and it lasts, which is what you want. So the simplicity of this diet is what logically tells me that is what you want to do. You want to eat something that's easy to prepare, that nourishes you, and that tastes good, actually. And it does taste good, which of course is a massive bonus. I presented myself with this question, being a vegetarian for most of my life. Okay, so you have a choice. You've been told, eat this food and it could prolong your life and possibly even heal your body, or eat this food and struggle even more financially, struggle with preparation, struggle with absorption. You still need supplements. Which one are you going to choose? Well, that one ticked all the boxes for me, and I said yes. And it's not mainstream. And if you think about it, back in the day when our ancestors were eating, food was simpler. You'd have meat and potatoes, or meats and vegetables, or whatever the story was. If you have cancer, don't eat the vegetables. Vegetables are full of carbohydrates. But if you want to eat the vegetables, do it and go on like a keto diet as opposed to carnivore. But there are other ways to get around the vegetable thing, or feeling like you can't get around the vegetable thing. And I think if somebody is challenging you in what you're wanting to eat, well, it's probably their fear, not yours. And I can't say I didn't have fear when I chose to eat how I'm eating. I had plenty of fear. I was going against a mainstream thing, and even something I have been learning my whole life in my research on health and things that I've done in the past, with cleansers and detoxes and all sorts of things like that. It was always vegetable based, except I would always throw in a little bit of red meat so that my iron didn't get low, which apparently is a big no-no. I saw somebody commented on something I posted the other day on another social media, saying how imperative it is that if you have cancer, you must be plant-based. And all the data indicates that that's where you can go. And I'll be honest, you can't find a lot of information online about people who have cancer with carnivore. You can't. And I've looked a lot. But all the information, if I put it together as a whole, when it comes to understanding cancer in the body and understanding my body and understanding nutrition, this makes the most sense for my circumstances and my situation. It might not for you. Maybe you think I'm completely off my rocker and that I'm just sending myself down death row. I'm willing to take the chance because everything in me and also the way my body is responding is saying I'm doing the right thing. And I don't really see much of another choice. I don't want to fight with myself about food. I don't want to doubt myself. I spoke in the last video, mindset is imperative. You need to know what you're doing, stick to it and go for it. Know yourself, understand your body, empower yourself, and go along that journey. And maybe I've taken a while to talk about it, not only because I'm not through to the other side, but because I don't want to get flack, because I'm choosing something that I know is right for me. And I don't want a million people telling me that I'm signing my death warrants and leaving my kids sooner than I should, because that's the whole point. I don't want to leave my kids sooner than I should. And my situation is not one of those situations where I can do things in this other way. So I hope I'm being clear in why I think meat totally and completely and entirely dominates my choice in the situation I'm in, as opposed to vegetables. The other thing, and I did mention it, is that meat makes fasting easier. So generally I eat one meal a day, unless, maybe I'm getting my period or something, and then I might be a little bit more eaty some months. And then I eat more than once a day, like usually just twice a day, because I'm not hungry. I also make an effort to eat when the sun is up, because apparently that's just healthy for human bodies. Makes sense to me. I've always been an early eater anyway in the day, and so I find that much easier than saying you can't eat anymore after this time. I don't know why, but eating in sunlight or daylight definitely makes the whole experience easy for me for any kind of intermittent fast. If I want to eat breakfast, I'll eat breakfast. If I don't want to eat breakfast, I don't eat breakfast. I just go on how I feel and if I'm hungry or I'm not hungry. And that's easy, because if you knew how good fasting was for you when you have cancer, you would realize how this is ticking another box. So if mainstream is telling me not to do something, the thing I want to do is also follow the money. And if you do a little bit of digging, you'll understand that if people only ate carnivore diets, a shop would look very different. A store or supermarket or grocery store, whatever you call it, we call it a shop. It would look very, very different. It would be pretty fucking empty. First of all, there would be no fruit and vegetables. There would be some butter and some dairy products and meat. And then maybe some cleaning stuff that you needed, which is all mightily toxic anyway. That's a side note. And maybe some toiletries, which are also mightily toxic. But again, we'll keep that for another day. Your shops would pretty much be empty. So if you look at how consumerism works in this world and capitalism works in this world, you'll understand how plants feed that well, besides the fact that the crops that they have and need to be farmed, and all of the things that come with the plants, but then they get shipped all over and then they need to be processed. How's that for meat? Meat is meat. That's the only ingredient is meat. And it's already got all the nutrients you need. If you look at most nutrients in our body, like all our B vitamins, our omegas, minerals, it's got the lot. It's a complete food. Plants don't have that. So supplements are great. Of course, sickness is amazing. So if people are going to stay sick, keep keeping them sick. Obesity, huge. And that's all the processed food that comes from plants. Seed oils, that stuff is so bad for you, toxic. When I used to eat seed oil that wasn't good for me, I'd literally need to go fall asleep. It would affect my brain so negatively. So follow the money. And when it comes to meat, it's so much more cost effective, and chances are people would start eating more locally from people who, keep a herd of cows or goats or sheep or pigs. People like to eat pigs or chickens. You could, depending on your circumstances, you'd even be able to have your own eggs. It's a very uncontrolled way of eating, and it costs a lot on all these corporations' pockets. And that to me is very, very problematic. And so if you can find a free way to heal yourself of cancer, well, that's not going to look great, is it? Not great for their bank balances. But I still believe that there are tons of people like me out there who don't have money, are in a situation where they're actually not ready to die quite yet, but they want to be healthy and they want to help themselves. And so hence me finding ways to help myself that allows me to stick around a little bit longer, but at the same time get better. That is my main focus, is I actually want to get better. Okay, that was really long-winded. I apologize if it's all just too much to listen to, but I think that it's important for people to understand motivations and thoughts behind something. I have studied nutrition for most of my adult life, and I was definitely bamboozled into believing that plants would be the right way to go. I even looked into vegan keto, which is ridiculous. I didn't want to eat most of the time, so I was eating so much less. I didn't lose any weight, even though I wasn't eating in the beginning when I did keto for 6 weeks, but I was doing a bit of meat here and there, but thinking the meat wasn't good for me, and that's the irony. But then I'd feel a dip in my iron and I'd go and get some red meat, and then I'd feel so much better. My brain chemistry will feel better. Everything feels better for a while. And I was feeling bad that I was eating meat, thinking I was doing myself harm. Meanwhile, perhaps it was my body trying to tell me, dude, that's exactly what you need if you want to get better. And that was amazing for me to actually get my head around. That part of it was very exciting. Going against the mainstream, that was scary as fuck. But then realizing that for the first time in my life, my body, I'm listening to my body, not to a narrative about food. And I haven't looked back since. I haven't looked back, and it's been easy not to look back. Not only the motivation to live and be healthy, but also from the perspective of when it comes to food cravings and stuff like that, because I haven't eaten anything other than meat, some tea and coffee, and some milk. I don't like cheese, lucky with that. But anyway, all right, let me leave that. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm going to leave my email address in the description box if you want to reach out to me. And maybe I could just send you links to stuff so you can research stuff on your own, because I really want you to empower yourself. You're walking this journey. Nobody can walk it for you. You're living in your body, and you're the one who needs to take control of this experience. Okay, bye.